Jim, I've promoted you to a panelist. So if you feel like sharing your screen, you're able to. I mean, if you want to have your camera on. If not, I'll run your presentation from here.
Thank you, Paul. You can run it from there. I've been watching the last 15 minutes of the chaos, and
nobody needs to see what happens behind the scenes.
I feel for you guys because we're the best at it with the city.
You know, the last time we did this interpretation, like we got it to work just a minute or two ahead of time. This time, no such luck. So,
yeah. If I'm guessing, it has something to do with the licensing. I think Maricela was right on something. That's what I was about.
Well, we'll figure all that stuff out. Well, the good news is we're going to record this and we'll share it to our website so folks can join later. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Paul Farmer with the Building Business Back program. The purpose of the Building Business Back program is to help businesses in Monterey County recover from the pandemic. So we have built our website, montereycountybusiness.com, to serve as a hub of information for businesses looking for resources, whether that's loans or grants or other support to help their businesses recover from the pandemic. So montereycountybusiness.com is our website, and you can also find our social media channels at the bottom of our homepage. We will be conducting a series of workshops throughout the year to assist our businesses within Monterey County with information. And one of those is for people to understand how money is being invested from the American Recovery Plan within our communities. And today our first guest is Mr. Jim Pia, the Assistant City Manager with the City of Salinas, who's going to share a presentation on what money the City of Salinas has received as part of the American Recovery Plan and how they're investing it. So let's give a warm welcome to Jim. And Jim, I'm going to go ahead and open up your presentation.
Thank you, Paul.
All right. So I'm not sure if it's whiteboard or what.
So share.
Okay. Are we good now? All right, let's see if we get this here. I can't see everything because it's covered here.
We can see it.
Okay, half of my screen's covered here. Slideshow. There we go. All right. Now I think you should be able to see it. So go ahead, Jim, and if you want, just let me know when to advance the slides.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Paul. I want to thank you and Philip as we advance through this. And it was just more about this day and this presentation, but your work over the last many months in collaboration with your Monterey County sponsor on this big legislation. It was nearly $2 trillion, as we all know, of federal government spending, of which, in the part I'll talk about, states and local governments throughout America received 350 billion of that nearly 2 trillion. And the city of Salinas portion was just over 51 million. So a large number. And I just wanted to review some of the categories. So yes, next slide. As you can see there, it's just over a year old. However, the Salinas City Council didn't take action until the fall of last year. It had some eligible uses relating to COVID-19, and they had specifics of what you could or couldn't do. Of course, politics comes into some of this, but they talked about public facilities or infrastructure or Wi-Fi. You can advance, Paul. So in those categories that we centered on were the ones there: public facilities, public infrastructure, water and sewer was a big one, and homelessness, a seemingly forever problem throughout America, throughout the United States, certainly in Salinas. And so we, when working with the city manager and all departments, we spent months working on something that we felt would be worthy of the expenditure. We did note oftentimes it was things that not necessarily were COVID per se related, but some of the expenditures were exacerbations of problems due to COVID. But some of them were our inherent problems that built up over time, particularly with facilities and infrastructure. And so I'm just going to go through some of the list here on public facilities. And you guys can see the screen. The City Hall, obviously now everywhere, people are reconsidering how they're circulating air due to COVID in all buildings, public and private buildings. And so we have a need to update that, but we also had a need, as we do that for City Hall, to put a new roof on and some just normal abatement of environmental challenges. And so we decided in Salinas to identify these types of possibilities and set this up for council. And we also put some money to the Hebron Family Center. The state was gracious enough to give us $8 million for the Hebron Family Center. The building is not occupied now, but we're going to start a project this year to put a whole new building there. We want to fix fire stations and recreational facilities. Again, some of that same circulation issues, HVAC issues, parks, $2 million for parks and fixing playground apparatus or social gathering, barbecue pits, those types of things. And one of the things the council did was they said, and Salinas, by the way, led the way in terms of percentages for COVID in Monterey County. And so they directed, and you'll see that there in the 93905 and 93906, where a lot of the incident rates were, that we identify those areas. And so we have sidewalk repairs coming now, moving from public facilities to public infrastructure, $6 million in sidewalk repairs, the same for street repairs and traffic safety. So for a total in that category of $12 million. Next slide.
Oh, sorry about that.
No.
There we go.
So investments in sewer and water, really the largest category here, because we do have a need to update our sewer system. A lot of folks don't, you count on these certain systems and they're not as juicy as other things, but they've got to be maintained. They've got to be repaired. And so we certainly see that need, and we'll be putting money to work there. Same with Gavilan, the silt removal in our creeks, a master plan for water generally. We're going to irrigate I talked about parks earlier. We're going to, we have decades old sprinkler systems and irrigation systems that we are going to fix with the ARPA funds, stormwater infrastructure as well. So that's the largest category of Salinas' area at over 15 million. And then the homeless and housing category, it includes everything from the Share Center operation, where we house 100 people or so working with the county, Chinatown Navigation Center, where we house some in Chinatown as well. The Downtown Streets team, if folks don't know what that is, they work throughout Salinas now and work with our homeless population or unsheltered population as needs arise, or if they're encroaching on areas where they shouldn't be. And I say shouldn't be, we would like none of them to be on our public spaces, but this is a big society problem, and we're just going to have to deal with it locally. We have a Salinas Motel program, and that, by the way, that $3 million came before then. The state of California provided us with some funds to acquire a couple of hotels. And so we're really putting a lot of money to the unsheltered in the housing area. And affordable housing, it seems like a large number, and we've all seen what housing has done, particularly in the last 2 years. It's also a very difficult problem. And so we're working to identify how best to spend that $7 million for affordable housing. Some of the challenges, we're only in 22, but this money, this nearly $2 trillion, and for us 51 plus million, we have a deadline. We have to spend it by 2026, the end of the year. Could there be an extension? Maybe. We can't count on that. But we also have to, in these projects, we have federal parameters that come with this money. We, for example, in government, they often say, well, run things like a business. And words to Paul's ears, I suspect, but it's very difficult. We have prevailing rates that we have to deal with. We have union issues, and a lot of the private sector doesn't deal with that. And those are good challenges for society, and we'd like to work through our issues with our unions. There's also environmental restrictions and the CEQA process. And so and I refer to this for the deadline, we have to make sure that our departments are still looking at prevailing rates when they go out for all those projects you just saw, that we are maintaining the federal standards for that. I wish we didn't have some of these. We can get things done, a little quicker, but we certainly recognize that this was money that benefits all of our residents in a number of ways, and we have to go with the Treasury Department guidelines. And so I know we talked about a few minutes here, Paul, but I'd like to answer any questions of any of the group or concerns that folks have. But you guys are angling for, there's a lot of pots of money here. I know you're working with the business community, the loans, there's relief for childcare opportunities. And so the best that we can get, and that's why I commend you, you're reaching out to the government portion here. There's rental relief. There are so many buckets of ARPA that I think it's very helpful that we get the word out. And so when you started the website a few months ago, I think that's going to help. But we just have to stay on it. All the county, the whole county, all the cities, to get the word out, because we can only do our part in government, in business, what you do. But there are opportunities out there for folks. And so that's kind of our picture of the 51 million that council took. We didn't have that grand project, if you will, but we found a number of ways that we could benefit our residents. And so with that, Paul, I open it up to any questions.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Any questions from the audience, you can type into the chat box and I will happily read them. And a reminder, if anybody comes on in Spanish, that we do have an interpreter, and si necesitan interpretación, nos pueden mandar un mensaje y le atenderemos.
Sí, buenos días. Marisela Quesada, queremos asegurarnos que si hay alguien en este foro que necesite la información en español, por favor, comuníquese con nosotros, ponga su nombre y su información de contacto para poder hacer un seguimiento después de esta presentación. Gracias.
Thank you for that, Marisela. Any questions from anybody? Okay. We don't see any, so Jim, we'll say you're off the hook. We appreciate your service with the city and sharing with us how you'll be spending investing the money from the ARPA plan. At a future workshop from the Building Business Back program, we will help people understand the process by which businesses can find out any opportunities that they may have if they're in construction or other areas where the city will be spending money. We'll talk about the process to get on the vendorization list, the vendor list for the city and the county, and how to identify the RFPs so you can see if they might be eligible for your business.
Very, very good.
All right, with that, Jim, we're good with you. I'm going to make you a co-host, Chris.
Okay.
So that should allow you to be able to share your screen now.
Okay.
Go ahead and try again, if you would, Chris, to share your screen. And now we can see it.
Okay. All right.
All right. And I think that's probably long enough. So Chris, if you'd like to, I'll do a quick introduction. Chris Donnelly is the director of the Monterey County Workforce Development Board and a partner that the Building Business Back program works with very closely. And Chris is going to talk a little bit about some of the small business relief programs that are being administered by the Workforce Development Board. So Chris, take it away.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. So the first part is I'm just going to really give an overview of the CARES grant funding that we did for the last 2 years and so forth with Monterey County. And then I'll be able to talk about our other 2 grant programs that we have as well that individuals could be able, or small businesses can be able to take part in. And so the give a little background. I'm sorry, I just got out of one meeting. I'm going into another meeting, and so forth. So what we received from the County Board of Supervisors in October of 2020 was close to $3 million, or a little over $3 million to be able to support small businesses in Monterey County during the pandemic. And this is really to help them in terms of the economic conditions. And we looked at primary support up to $10,000 to grants to small businesses. You know, to be eligible for the business, you had to be owned, operated, and headquartered in Monterey County. You had to have less than 50 employees. They were for profit. We did not provide funding to nonprofits and so forth. And we really looked at how you were negatively impacted by COVID-19 pandemic and so forth. And so we looked at our priority of businesses were pretty much in the unincorporated area of Monterey County in industries that are disproportionately impacted by COVID. And that was hospitality, tourism, you know, retail and so forth were those businesses that we looked at. And most of the businesses that we funded were actually small businesses in Monterey County. You know, and some of the eligible expenses that we looked at covering the cost on were payroll expenses, our rent, lease expenses, personal protection equipment, other equipment or supplies needed to continue operating safely in regards to the businesses. And what we did is that when we looked at paying requirements, we made full reimbursements and expenses that included any type of documentation, including proof payments and so forth. So we try to make it as easy as possible for a small business to apply for the grant, to be able to receive the funding and be able to get that money out as quickly as possible to them. And the round ones, we had 3 rounds of funding. And we had allocations for the first round about $1,346,000. Again, we were looking at small businesses under 50 that were negatively impacted. We did round 2 in February 21 with $800,000. Again, eligible employees, what we made a little bit easier was 2 to 50 and had no prior grant recipients. And also, again, hospitality and tourism were the areas that we really looked at focusing on again. And we had our third and final round of $900,000. Again, we were looking at employees with 50 or less, but also what we were able to do is be able to fund some of those businesses that were in round 1 and 2 for additional round, additional round of funding. And again, we looked at hospitality, but we also looked at entertainment and leisure as some of those areas that we would really focus in on and so forth. How we did a lot of the outreach, we did a lot of support in person, door-to-door businesses. We did supervisors of the chambers, community organizations, Monterey County Business Council. We did pop-up events at libraries. We actually dedicated our own webpage. We did a lot of information out in the community with webinars, with a lot of guidance, a lot of social media we ought to reach to. And also, again, I think the key point is all of our partners. Again, SBDC, Monterey County Business Council, the chambers, we're all instrumental in regards to getting this information out to small businesses throughout Monterey County. And it was very effective in regards to that. What we looked at, we had 409 grant applications that were submitted by 355 businesses, which 325 were eligible. And we awarded 341 grants to 290 businesses. And if we look at since we're within a county department and we're receiving funding by the county, what we did was broke them down by each of the districts. And if you look at District 1, was probably the primary most that we received funding from that Salinas area. And then also quite a bit in District 5 was in Monterey area, and that was Supervisor District 5. And then we broke them down by each of the districts, the amount of funding that was supported. And so each of the districts we looked at, again, District 5 had the most applications. We awarded most of the money in District 5 to about $1.1 million, and then District 1, and then all the other districts were, comparable in regards to it. But it was interesting, District 3, Supervisor Lopez's area, we had a lot of small businesses, and those small businesses were hair salons, taquerias and so forth that really were in need of a lot of that in childcare sites as well. So those were some of the businesses that we really looked at impacting. I broke it down by the industries that we looked at. Again, hospitality and tourism were the largest to receive funding. And then we looked at other services and then retail were the top three that we looked at in terms of the amount of funding and the number of applications that we received. And then when we looked at by the size of employees count, one employee, again, 56, but 2 to 10 employees were the hotspots in regards to looking at the number of businesses that we have. And there's over 19,000 businesses in Monterey County, and we really looked at how we could focus in on that. And most of those businesses are small businesses. And we really looked at those businesses from 2 to 10 were the ones that we really saw that needed the impact, were impacted mostly with COVID and so forth. Then you can look at the other businesses, and we didn't see any businesses for 41 to 50 employees in regards to that. And then demographics, 84% were located in incorporated areas, and we're only 14% in unincorporated areas. And then 182, or 51% were women-owned businesses, 59% were minority-owned, and then 18% were veterans. And then we also tracked if they received any other type of financial assistance. And we noticed that while 99% of them, or 28%, received none, while 72% received some COVID relief in regards to the CARES Act funds or any of the other grants and so forth. And then we did a follow-up survey, but what was interesting is that, and I think this is important for, Paul, in terms of, what you're doing with your grants and so forth, where you're really looking at when the respondents, a lot of them needed financial assistance, and new employee recruitments, effective business strategies, health and safety guidelines, human resource support, and employee training are the top areas that we look at. So a lot of businesses are still looking at really the effects of COVID-19 in regards to hiring people, looking at how they can help with business strategies and so forth, and looking at employee recruitment and training and so forth. So those are the areas. We also have right now currently, and I didn't do a slide, but we also have a grant that we have from the Small Business Advocate from the state of California, where we're providing micro grants of 5 employees or less, $2,500. And this is for those individuals and small businesses that did not receive any financial support from the state of California from any of the small business grants as a COVID relief. 5 or less employees. 2019, they had to make $50,000 or less. And then those are really the only criteria that we're looking at. So right now we have 180, we have enough for 180 businesses that we can fund. We received over 60 applications right now. So we really need to look at how we can get the word out to more small businesses in terms of especially micro businesses that we do have funding. So we have close to $300,000 or more that is still available to those small businesses in Monterey County that are micro businesses and that need support and so forth. And the application process is very easy. You can go onto our website, and our website has the information, the application. Staff is here to be able to assist you as well in terms of applying for those applications. So, anything else that you'd like, So, any questions that? You're on mute, Paul.
Yeah, there we go. Thanks for that, Chris. Let's see. Maybe you could stop sharing the screen if you like now, although I don't know if everybody can see everybody. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat box. Make sure we can read them. All right, seeing none, thank you for that, Chris. That's very useful information, and for the work that the Workforce Development Board is doing. That certainly does help inform us as well with what we're doing, and we'll continue to help support you in identifying more of those micro businesses so they can get apply for those funds. So I think that will be it for today. I just want to give you a preview into what's coming up for the Building Business Program. I mentioned earlier that we're going to have our next workshop will be on June 22nd. It's getting certified as a diverse supplier. So that means if you're a woman-owned business, LGBTQ+, disabled veteran-owned business, or minority-owned, We will have a speaker from the state of California who will explain the process that you go through, some of the benefits of being certified. And that will be on June 22nd at 11 a.m. So watch our MontereyCountyBusiness.com website where you can register for that. And then in addition to that, we are continuing to work on the Employment Retention Tax Credit, which was the driving force of our first workshop. We are working on a plan for direct outreach to businesses to make sure that they're aware of this tax credit. And we have identified resources that can help businesses that are large or small in being able to apply for that tax credit. So that will be one of our most important purposes for this year, is making sure that people know about that tax credit and that we're helping them get any dollars to which they're entitled. So that's what we're working on for now. I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and our speakers, Jim Pia from the City of Salinas and Chris Donnelly with the Workforce Development Board. And we want to thank the Workforce Development Board for offering their site in person here in Salinas as well. And with that, we'll go ahead and also to our interpreter, Maricela. Thank you for your